I absolutely love super saloons. They are the best of both worlds. They have the practicality of a four-door sedan or estate with the performance of a sports car, and Benefactor is a prime example of that. They are absolute madmen when it comes to tuning up sports sedans. At one point in time, the Schafter V12 you're seeing here was one of the fastest cars you could buy, period. And yet, the Schafter V12 is just the first in a long line of legendary Benefactor sports sedans. But in order to understand the origin point, we have to go back to the 1980s with this. A base model Vorschlaghammer. It's a very cool name for what is right now a very uncool car. It does its job perfectly fine. It's not crazy fast, it's not crazy engaging, it looks very nice, but it's not really interesting. I know the color isn't helping, but it doesn't scream performance, it screams illegally imported by the Eastern European bloc. It was very popular there, this base model, and you can see why. It was incredibly rugged, it was incredibly durable, and then it had the practicality and the availability of parts. It was just exactly what they needed at the exact time. And you could get upper trim levels for the more luxurious levels for sure, but it made its name really here starting out as this more affordable diesel gas option that you could get for everyone for a base price. However, the West did not view it that way, and they wanted more than just the base model. Specifically, they wanted to have a bit more fun. So Benefactor's in-house tuning shop came up with this. This modified Vorschlaghammer was one of the first cars that their in-house tuning shop ever made as part of their merger deal. It was a truly incredible machine. They took what was essentially, in the West, a luxury executive sedan and turned it into, well, a drift monster. This thing is an absolute tail slider. It's brilliant. I mean, I'm not really driving it too hard, and you can just see how much the back end wants to step out. This is a comfortable car. This is a clean car. It's subtle. It's very much like the Benefactor V12. It's uncanny. Now, the Schafter V12 has, as you would expect, a turbocharged V12. The Vorschlaghammer has a naturally aspirated V8. It feels almost American in many ways, into its front-engine V8, rear-wheel drive, large displacement, absolute hooligan. It's brilliant. If you wanted to make a normal-looking car fun, this is what you got. But if you want to make a normal-looking car fast, well, we need to take a bit of a detour to 80s Britain. The touring car scene was exploding. And that was a problem for Benefactor, because Ubermacht had made this. The original Sentinel was designed purpose-built for touring cars, and it was amazing at it. This is a wonderful car to drive. It's so responsive, it's so light, and it was so successful that Benefactor had no response to it. This thing was just in a different league. After the Vapids retired, this thing started crushing touring car championships around the world. Benefactor needed a response. So, they took their Vorschlaghammer and made this. the touring car homologation special variant of it. It's got the aero, it's got the better brakes, it's got the better engine, the better suspension. This is late 80s, early 90s touring car glory at its absolute peak. And I mean that both in terms of success and in terms of, well, styling. Look at that rear wing, my god, it's almost as tall as the car. In fact, it is the joint tallest part of the car, it's in level with the roofline. That's how big that wing is. And the results are dramatic. This thing is just... it's a bit more oversteery, ironically enough, than the Sentinel. However, it also has a lot more power, and it's a lot lighter because of more exotic materials and more extreme weight savings than the original Sentinel. This was an executive sedan without any pretense of being for executives or for the street. It's about as far removed from the normal Vorschlaghammer as you can get. It's a phenomenal machine, and it's took multiple touring car championship titles. It was a glorious little rivalry that these two had. And to drive, it's just so good. It feels so composed. You can push it as hard as you want. You can even step over the line a little bit and it'll still respond beautifully. This is one of my favorite cars ever, the final evolution of this touring car mayhem, the culmination of years of touring car warfare. And it started out as a normal benefactor. But here's the thing about the crazy sleeper and the touring car legend, they're both still somewhat normal. If I'm a cocaine-addicted businessman in the 1980s on Wall Street, I don't want a sleeper, and I want to be more comfortable than a touring car homologation special. That puts me in a bind because Benefactor didn't have anything else. They focused on those three markets: base model, racing, and luxury. But the luxury wasn't quite ostentatious enough, it wasn't showy enough for my cocaine-addicted tastes. Which is why I had to go outside of the Benefactor factory teams and go into the aftermarket sections. Specifically an aftermarket section so crazy that when the 80s finally died and the excess wore off, the company died with them. So you bought your luxury jet, and alongside it, look at it. We kept the original wheels because they looked amazing, but it's got a massive wide body kit. It's got a little ducktail spoiler. It is both a little subtle while also being very showy. No white, gray, or black paint. This is beautiful, crisp red paint. It's an exquisite design, and it isn't just style over substance, because in order to make it perform better than anything the Benefactor had to offer, they threw in a massive turbocharger. And the results, whoa! The results are dramatic. This is an absolute madman. In the 80s, this had as much power as some supercars, and it just spun the wheels for days. You had to deal with the turbocharger quite a bit. It is an 80s turbocharged lunatic after all. But if you got in the power band, as I'm in now, you could just spin the wheels all day long. It was more like the Schafter V12 than anything I've talked about before. Which is why I want to have a little bit of a race. From here all the way to the security gate on the other side down, a little bit of a time trial rally stage against the Benefactor V12 and then the crazy Vorschlaghammer. So let's try out first with the Schafter V12. This is modern. I'm leaving the traction control on in this one. I think it's going to be beneficial on the loose surfaces. After all, as much as you'd like to be on Wall Street, sometimes you're on your private cocaine-fueled island. When the feds come for you, you gotta be able to escape away to your plane. So these vehicles do have a practical purpose on dirt. Ooh, sorry. It's a tough vehicle, don't worry. This thing, it's a bit on edge, I'm not gonna lie, on dirt. But you know, it is doing better than I expected. It's pretty composed. I can't put the power down too easily. But for a massive turbocharged V12 sedan on dirt, going over jumps and sliding through hairpins, it's actually doing a pretty decent job. I'm not in too much terror. It's almost drivable in some ways. And we are across the line for the Schafter V12. I'm very afraid of the Vorschlaghammer, I'm not gonna lie. Because the V12 was oversteering. This has as much power as the V12, and it's from the 80s. And so we're off. Lots of wheel spin, but we should be able to get some mega acceleration down this straightaway and take an early lead. Now, the only thing I'm going to try to do is not die. This has no traction control, no electronic aids of any kind, really. And that means it goes absolutely everywhere. This has an option for drift tuning if you want it. People have made those. But I don't think you need them. Ooh. It just slides all day long. The turbo, they call these 80s turbo cars the Widowmakers. Because you have no power, then all of the power comes down at once as the turbo kicks in. And this is one of those. Yep, this is definitely one of those. Don't hit the wall, my god. It didn't want to turn, and it turned very much. This is definitely more intense than the V12. Roy. I didn't think I would say that, considering the Schafter V12 is one of the most mental four-door sedans I've ever driven. Whoa. But this definitely takes the cake. Look at me trying to put the power down squiggly across the road. We are now at full throttle going all the way across the line. Oh. Ah. That's a lot of car. Oh. I think that's definitely as fast as their factory efforts, maybe even a little more so. Oh boy. And it shows in the time, it's only 5 seconds off the pace of the Schafter V12, which, yes, it's only a 1:05 run, but for being almost 40 years older than that Schafter, it's honestly very impressive. I did not expect it to be that close between them. And I think that's what speaks to me about the Vorschlaghammer the most, because that car is 40 years old. It came out in the 1980s, the early 1980s, and then the crazy modified cars came out later on. The fact that a 40-year-old chassis, a 40-year-old suspension system can do what it can do, and the fact they were able to adapt it to so many different specialties, is what really strikes me about just how good that car is. If you want to have a luxury sleeper sedan that no one would think twice about at a stoplight drag race, you can get it. If you want to have a track-focused weapon that can take the fight to Ubermach and be a phenomenal, rare handling beast on the road, you can have that. And if you want to be even more seen and in your face than a touring car homologation special with a massive wing, you can get a crazy wide-body duck-tailed turbocharged monster. And they all do their jobs brilliantly. It's honestly one of my favorite cars I've ever driven. I don't really know which one I would rather have. I think I'd rather have the touring car just because I love that era of homologation specials, but it has something for everyone. And as we get more bland with our cars, that trait is something that we are sorely missing out on.